so it's 6 o'clock on Wednesday, November 1st, and I'm gonna bring the Vapor Run Unified School District Board of Directors to order. The first thing is the agenda review, and I actually have two things that I wanted to move. The first thing is I wanna move new business, the BFA stormwater agreement with the city, which is attachment 8D. I wanna put that down to 6B. I want to move that, and then I also need to add 7D, which is a personnel issue that needs to be discussed. Anyone else have any? All right, so next is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, next is the visitor section. And I'm wondering if we have any visitors that would like to speak.
We have some online, but nobody has responded yet.
Okay, so we'll give that just a little bit. So if anyone wants to speak, you can just put it in the chat and read it. Just gonna give that a little bit in case someone wants to speak. All right, so if not, we're gonna move on. So the next thing is the consent agenda, and if no revisions are requested, then the consent agenda will be accepted without objection. That includes the approval of the meeting minutes, the media packet, and staff changes. Anyone have any? All right, so that's accepted without objection. The next thing is reports to the board. And first, we're gonna have the student board representatives report.
All right, so yeah, we did a listening session to the school. Lee and I did the Mercury, so the school paper, and that was a predominantly freshman group. And so we got in responses on two of the goals mainly. It was the student and parent resources and the academic rigor. And for the students support, for the student and parent resources one, we had a lot of complaints about the busing, particularly the Allberg busing and the scheduling. And one of the students talked about how, I think he said he got up at like 5 a.m. to catch the bus to get to school. And the other was about, what did you bring up?
We talked about lecture style classes and how long the class schedules are for BFA. So just kind of evidence that we're talking about the goals with these students and trying to get their voices into our goals planning that we're all doing. We think it went well for our first couple of runs.
I did the sophomore student council and that one went really well. We were able to get quality information for each of the goal areas, and I think we got a lot specifically with rigorous academics, and then the community connections ones. So I think when we get those like typed up and stuff, that'll be good to look at. I don't remember off the top of my head what was said in a lot of them, but a lot of it was like about the long class periods and how we can make them like more interactive and engaging.
And that kind of coincides with the community forum that we had last week.
Yep, so kind of just the same thing that I mentioned last time about how important, and that's kind of what this group has been focusing on for the past month, and will continue to do so as our main goal, because it's very, very important to us as well. Any questions or anything? I don't think we have anything else. Girls volleyball just ended our season at the semifinal games. So that means Essex and CVU are in the championship rounds. Very proud of all our athletes.
Cross country just had their state championship. BFA qualified for Media Champs, which is this Saturday, and then the New England Championships, which is in 2 Saturdays. I was top 11 in the state, and top 11 in D1 and then top 15 in the state. So
Congratulations.
thank you.
I can share something. So at the Mercury, we just started putting out our articles for this year after we had a new advisor, and we've started to get the ball rolling on that, which is very, very good.
We're all set? Thank you. Alrighty, so the next item is 8B, 6B, which used to be 8D, BFA stormwater agreement with the city. Do you want to talk about that, or?
Well, Chip Sawyer's here from city to tell us a little about, he's been really working hard with our facilities director, Glenn Smith. And Chip and I have talked for, 18 months at least about this, maybe 2 years, about this plan to work together.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm the Director of Planning and Development with the city, and I'm leading up our stormwater planning efforts. The city is under a special permit called we call it an MS4 permit. It's all spelled out in your memo, if you want to see what that stands for. There are various things the city has to do to, in many ways, retrofit our operations and some of the land in the city to treat stormwater more than it's currently being treated, for the health of our streams and also for St. Albans Bay and the rest of the lake. We have plans to build some actual stormwater treatment facilities around the city, wherever we can, which will look mostly like something called gravel wetlands. You know, a lot of river rocks and greenery, a place for water to go during a storm to be slowed down, maybe even to infiltrate before it hits the waterways like a deluge. The BFA campus, actually the State Tech campus, many other schools and many other properties around the state that have 3 or more acres of impervious surface also have been caught up in some of this new stormwater permitting. You're subject to what's called a 3-acre permit, where all of these properties in the way have to explore whether you can add stormwater treatment to the property to meet certain standards. And what we've known for a while is that one of our larger city treatment projects at 74 Lower Weldon Street is going to treat a large area of the city, lots of different properties that drain to the catch basins, that go through the pipes to where this treatment facility is going to be. So it's going to treat all of those properties, including the BFA campus. So the BFA facilities director has been working with a consultant on some of the options for complying with the 3-acre stormwater permit. And, you know, I definitely urge staff and the board to engage in due diligence and, you know, avail yourselves of the consultants and the state staff that you have at your disposal to look at your options. But we do know that this large treatment facility that the city's trying to build and will eventually treat BFA. So we have an option where if the city incorporates a property into our MS4 permit with the understanding that we're going to be treating some or all of the water on that property at one of the things we built, then it can cover for your 3-acre permit compliance. And what we've discussed in general, and what is laid out in a draft letter of intent that's in your packet, is that we could enter into an arrangement where Maple Run pays a portion of whatever it costs to build this treatment based on your portion of the impervious in this drainage area, which is about 10%. We are very early in the planning stages. I wish we had a final engineer's estimate. You know, I wish we had the project out to bid. We don't. We have a general idea that the project might cost a few $1 million, that we hope we would get half of that in grants, state and federal grants. That would be the goal. So if you're looking at a $1.5 billion balance, 10% of that would be $150,000. That's nothing, that's not low, but we are finding that many of the 3-acre sites are looking at costs that are higher than that if you need to create treatment on your own property and in many ways retrofit a portion of your property. So I think the thing to take away is what you have laid out in front of you is an option to consider. The city's not in a huge hurry. We have a few years before we're going to build this project, but the opportunity is open that if BFA or Maple Run wants to tell the state that incorporating into our MS4 is gonna be your strategy for complying with your 3-acre permit, then, considering that LOI and signing it and incorporating BFA into the MS4 permit, would be the next step. But you can certainly look at various different options as well before you make a decision like that.
So I would inform the board that we have looked at a couple different options. We had a consultant, because we had engineers take a look at this. They've actually worked with Chip and this group as well, and they're working. It's a different set of, all the schools in the Lake Champlain Basin are required to do this. It's not just, St. Albans is under certain restrictions, but if you're a school anywhere within the Lake Champlain Basin, you're under basically the same restrictions, the way I understand it. Where some towns are not, so the schools have gotten stricter in some cases. We looked at it, and the only way we could solve BFA without going with the option with the city is we'd have to build settlement tanks, which would have to go underneath the parking lots at a great deal of expense, greater than the $150,000 to $200,000 that we're looking at to build, and then there's an annual maintenance, which Chip and you and I are talking, we don't know the numbers, but they shouldn't be that bad. When they come down. So my recommendation would be to, at the next meeting, we bring this to the next board meeting for action, and that we sign on with the city with this, and then we would be looking towards our capital funds to pay for this one-time expense out of the capital reserve. So, but that's something that we can talk more about. But I know that we're using, it's funny how the state regs work and who gets assigned to which consultant firms to help which schools. But the one for that, I know we'll be back here shortly talking about town school. City schools is actually in a good place because of the wetlands that are behind the city school actually help with some of that stormwater. The way I understand, unless you understand it.
Yeah, I imagine that it would be very simple to build a treatment facility with the land that city school has downhill of it, right?
Right, well, that's the downhill of it is taken care of it, from what I understand from Peter Garceau across Associates. So that city's actually in pretty good shape, the city school site, but town and BFA are not. And we're gonna have to, town can use some on site, and we may be looking at some off site. That's to be determined. Actually, I have a meeting next week. Derek, Matt, and I have a meeting we're gonna be on. And I'm not sure if you're part of that or not.
I know there were, a few of us are having discussions tomorrow
Yeah.
about it, yeah.
So.
Any questions?
What's the window of time to determine whether to make a move on the LOI?
I would, I think there's a timeline associated with BFA's 3-acre permit that you'd want to look into. That'd be a good question for the consultants and for,
Yeah, as I understand it right now, we have November 15th as the time we've got to be signed up to something. We have to have a solution that we're going towards. We have to tell them which direction we're going.
we have, for our part, I have told the state staff that we're seriously looking into this. So I think that it's going to end up buying you some time past November 15th.
And in terms of figuring out when, in terms of the city figuring out what the cost is going to be, what would the timeline be on? Is the timeline in terms of getting bids out and whatnot much longer than that?
I hope to be able to bid. I'd like to have this thing wrapped up and shovel ready next year. Use next year to do final permitting, all the engineering feasibility, figure everything out, get bid documents together. Over the winters when you typically want to bid projects, we're not ready to bid this winter. But I think into next year, we're going to at least have a final engineer's estimate, which should pretty well match what the bidding market's going to come back with. At the same time, we're going to find as much other funding sources as we can to bring the balanced cost of it down. And then we'll really know what BFA and any other 3-acre site that wants to be part of this, what their cost is going to start looking like when everyone pays it based on their prorated share.
And one of the things I heard, but I haven't had a chance to look into, is there are some grant opportunities to support schools with their stormwater piece. And Chip, you and I spoke about that last week. I just had a chance to get back with a gentleman and gave you the name.
Right.
would say. What are the grant opportunities?
Grants to help with the 150 or grants to help with getting it down to the 150?
Well,
With the
grants
150.
with the 150,
Yeah.
With the 150.
with the
Right.
150, yeah.
So the question I have, are there gonna be yearly fees after the one-time payment?
You know, these things do require some maintenance, certainly, it'll be low, not negligible, but it'll be low, and the understanding is that each of the participating parties would also pay a portion of that on the prorated. But, that's definitely not as high as the cost of constructing.
The other question I have is, do you roughly know how many 3-acre lots or customers there could be for this?
For this particular treatment, there are 5 potential 3-acre lots
Okay.
that will be given the same offer. And, you know, that are subject to the same challenges. The state wants answers from you on what you're going to do much sooner than we actually have to build our treatment facility. But the state's been sort of understanding and knowing that the timing's out of whack. So the other thing in our favor is that, you know, if the city is we have the LOI, if both parties sign it, the city's willing to incorporate you into the MS4 right away, which then buys you cover for a while. And we can both leave at any time. The city can unincorporate anyone it wants to at any point if things don't work out. You can leave an agreement at any point if things don't work out. But it means that we could pretty immediately just, for DEC's part, get you into the MS4 permit, into compliance. And then we have a lot of time to actually build a treatment project.
So what would be the disadvantages of voting against it?
I think that'd be a conversation for you and your consultants and facilities folks about what your other options are and what the likely costs will be. But in the meantime, get incorporated into the MS4, right? And you know, if things go south and this project's going to be really expensive and you start to get sticker shock, you have the option of saying, no, thank you. We're going to do something on site instead, and we don't want to participate.
I can tell you, about 2 years ago, we had to sit down with the facilities directors, myself, Cross Engineering, and someone from the state, I can't remember her name right now, but this was the best of all the options when we looked at where to go, was to go with the city. So at that point, it's like, let's just keep going down this road.
So, trying to get maybe trying to wrap my brain around it. So if we sign on to the LOI, it's a letter of intent, it's not a contract or anything like that, it's telling the state, we intend to do this to solve the 3 acre, or to be in compliance. And then if price comes back like triple what we were expecting, there's an option, basically say, that's no longer our intent, and then we would be on our own to solve that problem, correct?
Yeah, signing the LOI also gives the city comfort that we will, that comfort that we are going to start negotiating a final agreement while we also develop the final plans for the project. At that point, we're comfortable incorporating the BFA campus into our MS4 permit and just setting that aside for a minute. And then we can, you know, engage in our discussions, continue designing the project. And like you said, if at any time this deal doesn't look so good anymore, you could say, no, we're not gonna partner with you. And then we would unincorporate you from the MS4 permit.
In the town, we pay a $50 annual fee for the MS4 program.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a similar type of charge for that for the city residents?
Yeah, there's a stormwater fee in the city.
And then that money, how is that money used for the stormwater? I mean, if we were looking at this project where BFA is going to be exposed to, say, $150,000, is any of that money that the town or the city residents are paying into that MS4 program used for that, or do we have to come up with that separately?
It could be part of the discussion, but basically, the stormwater fee is used to support our stormwater utility efforts to deal with the community's general stormwater obligations and not meant to go toward any one property's permitted obligations. So it's really two different revenue sources and uses of the revenue. But, it could be part of the discussion. I hadn't really thought about it.
Any other questions? Nilda, any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Chip.
Okay. So next up is 6B, and I think Stephanie, you're gonna talk about the preschool system, the new preschool legislation?
So is it all right if I just stay
Yeah.
here? So I'm Stephanie Ripley, I'm the director of the early childhood program. I'm really excited to be talking to you all about preschool because there's a lot of good stuff happening. John is gonna be my tech facilitator, so I'll keep looking at him and being like, okay, move it along. So the first thing I kind of want to talk about is just why do we have pre-K and why is it important for our students to begin at this really young age. And so I don't usually like to read things to people, but I want to tell you what the teachers are saying because I think their voices are really important about the work that they're doing. So what the teachers want to tell you about preschool is that it starts our students on a path to becoming good community members and friends. They want you to know that it gives students a context for learning about routines, yet develop flexibility, and that it's a place for them to do a child's most important work, play. And they wanted me to make sure you knew it was the high quality kind of play that left on their own. And that pre-K supports students by providing wraparound support to engage in relationship building and connectedness in their community, so their homeschool community or their childcare community, but their community. So that's why our teachers are doing this hard work. And then I wanted to talk about the research, which is really like, when I talked to Bill and some of the leadership about this, I said, this is like the unicorns and rainbows of preschool. There are so many benefits that research has shown preschool has. And there are multiple research studies done through Head Start and like from the 60s on. But really, it's incredible what you get from preschool. There's less grade retention. Students are less likely to be in special ed. Kids who go to preschool are less likely to be suspended or expelled from school. They have improved graduation rates from high school and better social skills because they're getting that practice really early on. And they also have some really good executive functioning skills because that instruction happens really early. Monetarily, it's a great return on your investment. So you can see a benefit for every $1 that you invest in preschool, there can be a return of up to $2 to $17. So in the long term, it's a good business plan to have your kids in preschool and to invest in our youngest students. I wanted to talk a little bit about what makes pre-K effective, and this is the framework that preschool in Maple Run uses to determine our classrooms. So research has shown that small class sizes, learning time, time with teachers, qualified teachers, having mentoring and coaching for teachers, assessing social emotional learning, academics, physical progress. These are all of the things that make preschool effective. And then in Maple Run, I wanted to talk specifically about what this looks like. For preschool, we are not just monitored by the Agency of Education, we're also under the Agency of Human Services. So we have 2 state agencies that we're beholden to and whose regulations we have to follow. And one of the benefits of that really is the small class size. And the research has shown that small class size is really important, a small student to teacher ratio. And within Vermont, the way that it's written in the Agency of Human Services and DCF is that there must be one teacher for every 10 students. So if you think, you notice that preschool has a lot of adults in there, that's part of it. Because the state requires that anytime we might have a student who has a one-on-one, those adults aren't counted in our teacher ratio. So for us, it's really important to have inclusive classrooms and to have all of our students in our classrooms. So what if that means more adults, with the flip side of having more of our students in the classroom, then to us it's important for them to have that opportunity. I just this is like a little brag, but we have some really great teachers. We have highly qualified teachers. We have 3 level 1 teachers, so this is like teachers in the beginning of their career. We have a lot of level 2 teachers, and we have 3 dual certified teachers who are both special educators and early educators. So we have a couple teachers who actually embed goals throughout the entire day for students in their classroom. And it's one of the really amazing things about our teachers is how closely they partner with special educators to make sure that every hour that students are at school, they're getting work on goals and closing the gap between where they might be and where we want them to be. So it's not just that you're getting an hour of speech a week, you're getting as many hours of speech as you're in preschool, because all of that is wrapped into your day. So our learning time is how many hours right now we currently offer. Every school is different, and that's based both on parent feedback and on the number of students that we have. So we do want to be able to serve as many students as possible, which is why we still have some half-day programs, because we're able to kind of double up our class sizes in that way. We have a morning and an afternoon. And we still have families who request that and like to have a shorter day for families. But in the long term, what research shows is that the best, sort of most bang for your buck happens when you have at least 6.5 hours of preschool a day, 5 days a week. So that's really sort of the gold standard of what we can do and what research is showing works. So the other pieces of we have implemented some really exciting curriculum for our preschoolers. We're starting to use Amplify, which is the literacy program that the rest of our schools are using, but it's meant for pre-K. So it's developmentally appropriate science of reading at the pre-K level, and the kids love it. It's very play-based, it's very hands-on, and it's a lot of the same things that teachers were doing before, but in a more systematic way, and people understanding like where you start and where you want to go. We also have a lot of social emotional learning, because that's our jam at preschool, is to do a lot of social emotional learning. We embed conscious discipline, which is a relationship building tool, especially for kids who may have experienced trauma. We also have second step, and we use the pyramid model, which is a model that the state is really recommending for us to use. It's a social emotional learning tool. It's a framework. So it's all about how do we engage with students, how do we set examples for students by relating to each other and the adults in the room, relating to families, and then designing an environment that's really making it possible for all of our kids to access their education rather than having, individualized goals and pieces like that. So that's what our classrooms are looking like right now, and those are the ways that we've tried to take what we know is best about preschool and embed that in what's happening in Maple Run. So I just wanted to share a couple different pieces with you. The first is that one of the ways that we measure preschool and what our kids are learning is we have pre and post assessments for social and emotional learning. It's called the Devereaux assessment, and it looks at factors of resilience, really. So what are the pieces that make up a kid's resilience, so they're bounced back from having stressful events in their life? at the same time, things like, so we measure things like initiative, like how independent they are. We look at their self-regulation, and so these measures help us find the gaps that we need to focus on and teach, so that we can fill those in. And also for students who might have experienced trauma or have delays, it creates an environment and gives the teacher information about how to put those things into place to build those skills at the ground level, rather than having to do like an individual goal or an individual intervention. It's just built into the classroom and everybody's working on it. So one of our really exciting things is we pre-test in October and we post-test in April and May. And 84% of our kids who had red flags on this assessment showed growth by the end of the year. And that's a really great thing to see, because it shows how intentional our teachers are being and how planful they are when it comes to social emotional learning, and really helping our kids get ready for their next jump into the bigger grades. The other piece that I wanted to share is our really exciting, it's called our baby doll circle, and it sounds simple, but it just kind of shows how complex play is. So we have many students who are working on, who have experienced trauma, who may be working on things like attachment. And so what we know about attachment and attunement with students at this age is that those are things that have to be in place in order for kids to learn self-regulation skills and executive function skills and pro-social skills. So it seems like a simple thing just to play with dolls, but the scope and sequence of this curriculum helps kids begin to make connections in their brain that may have been missing because they may have had a parent who wasn't able to respond to them when they were little. So I just wanted to play, it's only 17 seconds, and it's our very first baby doll circle in this class in the beginning of the year, so keep in mind, like, preschool is chaotic, but there's good learning happening, and it's kind of exciting, so I don't know if John can, if it will show.
Oh no, where are my baby sweets? Oh, there are my baby sweets.
So it seems really simple, but it actually is helping those kids make neurological connections that may not have happened. And what some of the research related to this curriculum has shown is that when these students reenact this work later on, it releases calming, like stress release hormones, and can actually build their resilience later on. So if they take it home and they play with their babies in the same way, it's a benefit to their little baby brains. So that's pretty exciting. So I just wanted to let you know, like, this is what it looks like right now in Maple Run. We serve 3 and 4-year-olds. ID means in district and out of district. And one of the things that we have happening within pre-K is, it's called Act 166, and it came out many years ago. It's the universal pre-K law that says every 3 and 4-year-old in the state should be able to access 10 hours a week of preschool. So because there aren't as many schools and classrooms as there are maybe childcares, that it also allows for students who attend what are called partner sites to get 10 hours of paid preschool as well. So in our district, so we have out of district and in district, and that's how many 3 and 4-year-olds right now are at partner sites. We have 86 4-year-olds and 51 3-year-olds currently, and we do have some out of district students, because that is part of Act 166, is there's parent choice for where kids can attend school. So if you want to click to the next one.
Verification.
Yeah.
on something. So you're saying that it's not just because you don't have enough space, it's because maybe a parent works in,
Yeah.
some town, and it would just be easier for them to be able to.
Exactly,
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
so if we pay tuition to places that are in Burlington, if you were in Stowe, like John could bring his daughter up here and she could go to childcare and get tuition for that too. So, total we have over 200 kids who are accessing partner sites and our programs. And then the bottom is just, I wanted to show we have, that's our number of students on IEPs, and they are within either receiving services within their childcare homes or within our classrooms. So oftentimes people ask about how many kids we have on IEPs, but that's what that looks like.
Is that typical for the preschool age group?
So it is typical for us to have more kids on IEPs than other grades because the way the law is written for kids who are 0 to 3, you have to show a observable and measurable delay in order from birth to 3 in order to qualify for specialized services. And that's, that can be, it's not too tight of a measure. So if you have an assessment that you're doing on students and there's a slight delay, they can still access services. And when they transition to us, they have to show a 25% delay in an area. And so we tend to have higher numbers of kids because that is just, it's not as high a threshold to meet. But at the same time, what we see is that if we can catch them early, we can catch them up. So the earlier they get intervention, the more likely they are to come off those IEPs by kindergarten or first grade, or as we have to evaluate every 3 years. So by the 3rd year, oftentimes those kids are exited.
What do you think is the percentage of the students that you get at 3 who maybe were not on an IEP, did not receive any services, that then received an IEP from 3 to 6? And if you don't know that today,
No,
that's
I
fine.
don't have a percentage,
That's
but
okay.
I can say that it's easier to identify those students when they're within our programs than it is when we do have traveling special educators and SLPs who are in partner sites, in childcares or in homes, but it relies more heavily on parent report or the doctors to let us know, but if we can see them, then we can catch them.
Right,
So,
I was just wondering if you are seeing most of the students that are getting to you at 3 already on IEPs, or are you seeing like, oh, we feel like we need to put them, the ones that are within your program? Are you feeling like you have to add more students or to get an IEP?
No, I think our birth to 3 people are catching most of our 3-year-olds, or our kids who need that early intervention at that birth to 3 level. And I think, again, it's that threshold that they have, but also our early intervention with NCSS, they're a very active group, and I feel like they catch a lot of kids. So it's, we still have those kids come through at all ages where we notice something, but mostly I feel like they're well identified. The next part I just wanted to talk about are what are the requirements right now of Act 166. So like I said, there are pieces of our program that are based around what we know from research in terms of best practice. But there's also what the state sets out for us to do. And they require that we assess students twice a year, and we look at all of their growth. So their cognitive growth, their social emotional growth, their motor growth, all of those pieces. And that all students have 10 hours a week of preschool, 3 and 4-year-olds, for 35 weeks. And that is for if you want to be a partner site. And you also, if you want to be a partner site, have to have a licensed teacher on site 10 hours a week. If you're a home-based childcare, then you have to have them for 4 hours a week. And we also have a continuous monitoring system that both childcares and the school have to use. It's called the Step Ahead Recognition System, or STARS. And you can actually, when you reach higher levels of STARS, the state does actually give you a bonus. So that's nice. If you want to go ahead. So these are just some of the numbers. Right now, this is the amount we pay to our local partner sites. So out of district and in district, and that's what we pay for them to have that access for 10 hours a week. Some of the challenges our partner sites face related to this is that, when we're within a building, we have a lot of support. We have access to homeschool coordinators, we have transportation, we have lunches, and local partner sites don't have access to some of the things that we do at the public school level. They also face some of the same challenges we do in terms of staffing and finding staff to stay because, as you know, like, there's not a lot of childcares and there's a lot of openings, so there's definite, like, battles over teachers right now. We all want them. And so the other piece I just wanted to talk about was the challenges of not having our pre-K students in our public schools, and that it is, we really do want to have them with us so that they can be in their home community school and get to know teachers, have access to transportation so that they can come to school. It often puts them on the same schedule as their siblings if they have older siblings, so parents aren't having to do as many drop-offs and pickups and, finding childcare and pieces like that. And we also, because we have our special educators and related service providers embedded in our program, we're able to do really like classroom accommodations for students, so it doesn't have to be as, we don't have to have an hour of speech a week if we're having 25 hours of speech a week because you're in school with us. So those are some of the things reasons why we want our kids in our public school, is we want to be able to give them those opportunities, while understanding that parents who work especially do need things like extended hours and longer days, or at least hours that align with the rest of the school. So the new law. Bill asked me to just talk a little bit about what's coming up for preschool. You might have seen Act 76 in the news, I think it was like right before the summer, where this is the law that is supposed to expand childcare for people. So there are sort of two aspects of it. There's the financial aspect of families who are at the federal poverty level or 400% above the federal poverty level are now getting financial assistance, and that's a payroll tax that is, it's going to be implemented like step by step throughout the next 2 years, but it's supposed to help families because childcare costs are really substantial. The other part of this is that it is looking to stabilize the early childhood workforce and offering some benefits to people who are graduating with early childhood degrees, since there's such a search for teachers. And then the other piece that really affects us is that they've put a committee together to look at whether or not preschool for 4-year-olds should become 5 days a week, full days, so to have similar hours to kindergarten. And as they investigate that, they're looking at stakeholders from all walks, so home-based providers, people from the AOE and human services, but public school as well, and changing some of the funding models for preschool, because right now, preschool has an average daily membership of negative 0.54, so we aren't paid, you don't have like the full ADM of a student in kindergarten through 12th grade. So they're investigating like what does it cost to educate our youngest students, and should they be weighted as much as a K through 12 pupil. So once they're also looking at what's called a mixed delivery model, so they haven't eliminated in this law at this point the idea of this 5 days a week full time being also at a partner site. So that is a bit of a change from the first version of the law, which said that public schools needed to serve all students if they had a public preschool. So that's preschool in a nutshell, where we are and where we're headed. And that committee is supposed to be finished their work by July. I think it's July. I think they want to know by July 2026, like they'll have a plan for what preschool will look like. But that's preschool.
Thank you, Stephanie.
No problem.
Awesome.
Any questions?
Yeah, so do you feel like right now you have the resources that you need to serve all the students that you want to be serving?
No. I mean, in a perfect world, I would have all of the preschoolers that wanted to be in a public school, and we would have, more classes and longer hours and all of those things. But for what the community has told us that they want, like having half-day programs and having that be an option, I think that we're serving as many students as, like, if they come in, we have rolling admissions, so we might have to put you on a wait list, but eventually, we've been able to serve the kids who have come to us and wanted a spot.
So right now, you don't have anybody at one of your partner sites because you didn't have space?
I don't think so. If it is that, they haven't said that to me, so. It would probably be more related to hours and work than wanting to come to public school because they want those extended hours.
But right now, there aren't full-day preschool, or are there?
We have extended day preschool. We have, so city school has 4 days a week of hours that run the same hours as the rest of the school. And they have 4 days a week because of the regulations that are around our program. Our teachers have to be with, our teachers, our ESPs all have to be with their students. So things like break, planning time, like our teachers plan on Wednesdays because they can't leave their students to do those things. They have to eat lunch, like the regulations say you eat lunch with your students. Like these are different pieces between a school and childcare reps that we have to adjust.
They're not going to PE and then they don't have to be with their kids.
Exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
so they need a day where they do all of their planning. You
Yeah.
can't be with kids.
Right. So. Yes.
So when you say like partner sites, the public sites are like at city school and then the partner sites are like at home or like with another school district?
It could be like a childcare like Blooming Minds or a Head Start program would be a partner site. It could also be a home-based daycare as long as they have a teacher, a licensed teacher for a certain number of hours, and we can partner with
And
them.
are they a partner with Maple Run or with the state?
So they're a partner with us, but we are actually, we have a consortium agreement, so any student in any district could attend a childcare that's here, and then that district pays. So places like Blooming Minds might get tuition checks from Maple Run and Franklin Northwest, and even maybe from Chittenden County.
Kind of like the school choice program.
Yeah.
Another question. If the law does go into effect in terms of four-year-olds having a mandated, full week preschool, would kindergarten then become compulsory?
I don't know, that's a question that's been raised a lot because it isn't. And we do have some families who want to go right to first grade, but I haven't seen anything about kindergarten in the Act 7 as a compulsory, or for preschool for that matter. It's supposed to be available. Well, thank you for listening to my long spiel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right. So we are moving on to 7A, the old business. We talked about this at our last meeting, governance self-evaluation standards. And last time around, we talked about 2 different goal statements. We'll just get to one.
I think we just got to one.
All right,
So we talked about, we definitely talked about the Maple Run Board will develop and implement a plan for monitoring the district's progress on District 5 goals. And this time, we're gonna be talking about, we said, we were planning on 3, but did
Yeah.
we talk about 1?
We haven't yet, and it might be better to do 3,
Okay,
because Jack and I are gonna talk a little bit about one that we saw.
Okay.
In that next one, we talked about checking it.
Okay. All right, so, what we're gonna do is, the goal statement that we're gonna talk about this time around is it's the 3rd goal statement, which is Maple Run Board will implement strategies to create and support respectful dialogue, a culture where all voices are welcome and valued, and ensure information is easily accessible. All right, the action steps are, we'll implement strategies to create and support respectful dialogue, a culture where all voices are welcome and valued, ensure accessible, communication is easily accessible. So we talked about creating a communications, public relations position, which,
Aaron is here for tonight.
are you gonna talk about that at all? No? Yeah. So, but that's Aaron. And then also, the second point is informing staff, students, caregivers, and community members of access points for information. So, seems like we did talk about this last time.
Okay.
Do you guys remember talking about this last time? No? All right then.
Talking about accessibility, third goal.
Yeah. Do you guys remember talking about that?
Did we talk about number 2?
Yeah.
We talked about number 2.
Because we brought up like blogs and other things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
accessibility.
Yeah, we talked about number 2.
I think there's a lot of overlap.
No.
Yeah.
What we talked about last time, can also apply to
Yeah, I
this.
feel like we have talked about it.
I don't think we're many board members here, so that might be.
Yeah. So
Is that-
some people might not and some people might.
Okay, so the question is, what else do we need to know? What else do we need to know, and what else are we looking for under action steps for the 3rd goal statement, which is, we're gonna implement the strategies to create support, dialogue, a culture, ensure information is easily accessible. In this list here.
I mean, for me, it was increasing accessibility, so making sure that, do we have maybe an interpreter here, right? Making sure that our information is accessible to all of our constituents, community members. So, lots of different ways to do that, right? So just gotta think about all the different ways to make sure people can read and understand and comprehend everything that's being said, and that it's done on multiple ways in terms of getting information out. So whether it be written or whether it be on the channel 15 or whether it's on Facebook, I don't know, all the multitude, and I know that that's what Aaron is probably going to, be primarily responsible for. But other ways that information can get out, and also word of mouth as well.
So if we look at the list, here, students and staff, the website, the blog, social media, front porch forums, St. Albans Messenger, hard copy, information is distributed. What else are we missing?
I know we talked about doing the coffee shop thing. I was just wondering what the logistics of that were and how that looked like. I know, Joanne, I feel like you liked that one in particular. I didn't know if you wanted to add that.
Yeah, and it kind of goes with this one, but it also goes down with the board goals
Yeah.
of opportunities for family and community engagement, right?
Yeah.
Creating more opportunities to connect with our community.
And make it accessible.
I think when you want to have that two-way communication, like we've done in the listening sessions, it's getting people to understand, getting people to come. And a lot of times that's trying to say, hey, are there 2 friends that can come with me? And start understanding it's gonna start really small. I was saying this afternoon up at Fairfield, like, I'm really excited by the response we're now getting this year in the strategic plan from the community compared to last year with listening sessions, and how fast people are reacting, because it takes time for people to understand that, hey, you're truly listening. And you really want my feedback. So it's that, how do you start, when you talk about coffee shop, roundtable discussions, how do you get a few people to come to help spread that word? Because the most powerful is that word of mouth.
And where can you go to seek out people?
Right.
So maybe it's not always inviting people in, but it's also making yourself available for where people already are.
Yep.
So we know in Fairfield, we have limited opportunities for that, but we've got like the senior meals, we've got Chester's, we've got church. I'm not sure.
One of the best ones I've seen in my whole career is the transfer station.
I was gonna say, the dump, that's what everybody says.
I'm serious. You stand there and help people with their trash and you have a question about it. I mean, that's a little hard in the city with some of the, but it's that type of idea. Where can you catch people and say, have you thought, and it's no more than a 3-minute conversation.
Sporting events?
Hannaford?
Yeah.
Hannaford. Yeah.
Right.
That's, I remember a board chair and the board member, in one morning, they talked about 120 people in the town of Worcester, and there's maybe a population of about 800.
How do they do that?
They were at the transfer station, help everyone with their trash.
Yeah.
Let me help you with that. I got a question. What do you think of the schools? What do you think?
Sporting
of the
events,
group?
I think are definitely, an
I think-
audience.
I think sporting events would be good, and then you can like show support for the community and ask questions. I think that would be a good one to do.
So is there anything else missing from this? Like, I think, kind of in response to your question, like, how do we do the coffee shops? It's us committing to that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be, it's, us committing to going someplace, It might be the Travel Cup, it might be Chester's, it might be go to Stones, East Fairfield, or, and it's us committing to that.
The other thing that we heard from Phil Gore 2 years ago, he talked about what Washington Central did.
Yeah.
And Washington Central they would have one meeting a month was about business.
Yeah.
The second one was a community forum, so it was roundtables. So they would have, like Stephanie would do the presentation you just did here. But let's pull in other community members, bring a few people, and then the board members and the administrators just put up around tables and just listen to what other people thought about what they heard in that presentation. But the part that talking to Flora Diaz-Smith, the chair, I asked her about this Thursday and Friday at the conference, and she said it just started really slow, but they built it for 3 years, so now they have a steady stream of people that know to come. The second meeting of the month is a forum, and we really publish what the pieces are gonna be. We're gonna talk about preschool, and then we're gonna talk about special education, and some more of it's like, what do you think? What are you thinking about community?
And you're educating on top of receiving information.
There you go, about how the system works. So it's a two-way conversation.
And you're educating your board members in that matter too.
What are you thinking?
Good pause time.
So if we had a more of a community forum type of meeting, would that be something where we could waive the 3-minute?
Well, that's what I'm saying, the forum is you break up around tables and you have conversations.
Okay, so it wouldn't be sitting,
Yeah, and it's not that someone's taking minutes at every table, it's just you're listening, you're having a conversation. You get informed.
And, again, so how do we make this happen? Maybe it's that we determine as a board, all of us are gonna participate in, one community something, once, twice a year. Like starting small is, so I think we all need to figure this out, like I think I'm at work by 8 o'clock in the morning in town, so I can't, I'm not going to Chester. I could go to Chester's at 6 a.m. and whenever they, open up. So what are the other opportunities in committing to make it happen? Maybe we need to stew on that and then come back and say, I don't know, do that other than make, this is what we can do. This is a commitment that we're willing to make, outside of board meetings to meet up with the community.
Jacoby, can you explain how the listening sessions have gotten, you guys have developed all those, might help.
So yeah,
So
this
do it.
is kind of a lot of overlap. So what we've been doing is, so we picked like clubs to start with because that's like a good way to get people that meet on a regular basis. And we go in there, and with the 5 newly adopted goals is we're asking students like what they want to be incorporated in the goal, and then how do they know that we've met the goal. And so like for versus academics, that's just like, you know, the biggest one that we get a lot of stuff on. It's like, what is it in the classroom that you feel challenged in? It's not necessarily like making the standards be so hard that it's impossible to get an A, but like what questions are you asked? What type of teacher, the class size, the class times? And so like just like ask questions, and you can have like a format. And so what we do is we go in, and when there's larger groups, we have big sheets of paper, and people, they split up into groups, and then they work around the 5 tables, and it takes like 30 minutes to do. And then with the smaller groups, like you guys did, it's, you know, with different clubs, you know, they're naturally going to gravitate to different goals depending on what the club is focused on. Like GSA would probably gravitate towards like the inclusivity and engagement goals, but like the math league would gravitate towards rigorous academics and expectations. So making sure you go over all of them, but the ones that are going to be particularly important to the club, you talk about those more, and then you ask questions that maybe you want answers to, and then it starts to build a conversation to become self-sustained, where people are just leading the conversation, you're just writing stuff down, and then if there gets to be like a dry point, you guys can like ask like another question, just get the minds turning again. And that would be a good thing to do.
I think we also talked a lot about how the clubs were just easier to have conversations with. We were talking about how we send an email, we don't get a response. We send a form, we don't get a response. We ask people to come, nobody shows up. We tell them you have to be there, nobody goes. So just going to pre-established clubs, saying, hey, we're taking over, you guys are already here, and this is what we're doing. So that's what we decided. We've had such great turnout.
And what's the limitation, what are your limitations at? I want you guys to keep going, and then I want to talk about, can you talk about how you figured out who's doing what? Because I think that will help where the rest of the board was just in the conversation.
What we did is like our entire team, like we have a shared Google,
But don't go into the technology.
Yeah.
Just tell me.
we have a shared Google thing, and it has every club on it, and then it has who's doing which club, and so each person, there's like 15 that we're doing, so each person signs up for like 2 or 3. And
they're in the clubs already.
yeah, and they're already in the club. So like if someone is already like going to the travel cup every morning, or if someone's already in the Chester Club.
There's lots of people in the Chester Club.
I don't know what that is, but if you're already committed to doing that and you're doing it periodically, you sign up for that. You don't have to go out of your way and go somewhere where you're not gonna go. And that, like, you hit a larger group of people when you do things you already want to do, and you already have connections. And that way it's easier to create a conversation versus like with someone you have no idea who, and you're like, okay, let's just talk for 30 minutes, and it's like awkward and like no one really wants to do it. Versus if you have like connections already, it's a lot more successful.
So one limitation though I will say was when we did the Mercury, like I said, the Mercury is predominantly freshmen this year, and so when we were discussing things like rigorous academics, there's so new to BFA and BFA's schedule and the way that BFA does things that they didn't really have anything to compare it to. So I would say that that was one of our limitations, especially for that goal.
We also, our major limitation was people that are in clubs are those that are really involved.
Yes.
So
That was my next question.
This has been a big topic of
yes, we were
discussion.
saying, how can we reach students that normally do not get asked those questions, the ones that need to be answering those questions, the ones that don't feel comfortable sometimes answering those questions, and we are still trying to figure it out. We're still trying to, make
What do you think your best solution was last year, Leah? Why don't you go into there? We talked
Last year, that is where the interviews came in, where I specifically went up in person and asked students like one-on-one to share it in a more closed-off manner in the interviews. it was me, it was the one recording, and that was it. And it was just very, very personal experience. Instead of saying in front of a club, saying in front of your teachers, that's really scary for a lot of students to say it out loud in front of a ton of people. So I think it really fostered the small, like, very inclusive, like, conversation. But that again is hard to pick out kind of certain students. But we're just really looking for anyone that was willing to talk. Yeah, we talked about going into classes, going into kids that like lunch tables during school. But we're still working on that.
So I think that, the reason I wanted you to tell that story is, they're not trying to do something hard. They're trying to do something they already know, like they already have a connection. It was like, let's at least get some success. We know the limitations. You guys have been really, the student voices have been really clear every time I'm in. We're talking about this, which seems like every meeting, about we're not getting the voices we don't want to get, but we're not going to stop because we're not getting it. We're going to at least get something.
Well, and it does you bring up a really good point. Like, I could probably walk into Chester's, there's a tiny little bakery in Fairfield.
Oh,
They have coffee. Every
Big
morning,
ones,
you know. I could probably walk in there and strike up a conversation with a bunch of different people. But I couldn't walk into the travel cup and do that. So that's why I think it's behooves us to figure out.
So like you would do Chester's, because that's already a place that you have a connection and you were already, like, I think
Or the food shelf, because
the food
they
shelf.
do.
Food shop, yeah. That's what
And
I was saying.
they're, you know, Tuesday afternoons.
So I think from that, if people could think about it and come back next time, they just create a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And we're asking them about education.
Yeah.
What questions are we asking?
You're asking about the goals right now,
Okay.
but for these, it's,
We're just.
you're trying to get some input about, I would start with the same thing that started with listening sessions last year. What's going well in the schools?
Yeah.
What do you think needs improvement? And for kids who are struggling, I would just use it that way. Because I have found it's the best way to ask about, for people to understand, for kids who are struggling, what should we be doing to help them?
I was just gonna say, I like two different approaches, having one board meeting, like even quarterly, be something really interested and informative to the community, and then inviting people in and doing those roundtables. But then I also like going where people are, because the people who are gonna come to those events are already interested and engaged, and we want those opinions, but also going to things like National Night Out and having a table, or the Maple Fest and having a table and having something like, a big poster with a question where people can write things down, or some sort of dot voting, have a question up there just to draw people in who might not show up at a community forum.
That's a great idea. You could do something like that, put a poster up, like at all of the post offices even, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a question or two questions, and ask people to fill it out. That's great.
It's late in the year for it, but the farmer's market would be.
Yeah.
That's what Denise Smith did with the hospital planning. She was right next to me one day, and she said, you put dots in which one of these areas that are action areas is most important to you.
Probably went to the same workshop.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure you had this, yeah.
So one thing before we go, so I was talking to Ms. Bristol and she said that she's establishing a PTO at the school.
Yeah.
Do the other schools have PTOs?
I think Fairfield does.
Yes, Fairfield does.
That would again be another place, a good place to ask those type of questions.
So, for the next meeting, the ask is, if people come back and think about what's realistic that they can commit to in terms of, is it, once a year, twice a year, every 4 months, whatever, that they can get to a place so they can engage with people. So what can you commit to, and what are your ideas for where you're gonna, how we can spread the wealth, I'll say, in terms of hitting all these different places that you might do that.
The only other thing they did say that they have a script. It's a background script. They don't necessarily stay to it, but they have a script. So they know how to, what are you doing?
Go in organized.
And everybody's asking the same question.
Yeah, and it's very uniform, so don't change it up with each group, because then you're not getting accurate results, like ask the same questions and make sure, like as the conversation progresses, ask different questions, but start with the same questions and you'll get more accurate answers.
Because I do think there'll be lots of other things that come up,
Yeah.
you know, which is kind of the standard when people run into in the store, it's like, what the heck happened with taxes this year? And having, you know, like at least for us, having an understanding of what really happened and how that works, because we will be facing some of those questions, especially if we're going to places like Chester's. All right, thank you all. Congratulations to the Comments Volleyball team.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that was governance, self and standards, and then the next section is actually looking at a plan for meeting board goals. Not really want to talk about that.
I gave an attachment, I think I just gave back.
7B.
Yeah, I just took what you said last time
Okay,
and wrote those up.
okay.
What I didn't get a chance to do, and Susan, you and I talked about this on Monday, I have examples of many other superintendents and school districts that have a schedule of reports, and they have it actually very color-coded, where they say, okay, these are the different places we're monitoring, and it just is a rotation of the different goal areas that were identified in their strategic plan / goals, district adaptive goals. So I'm gonna take this piece. One of the things I wanted to talk with you about was we have 2 goals for this year. We have 5 goals starting next year. We have 2 goals this year where our objectives, key results are OKRs, as we call them. So we have the one around restorative practices and the one around our curricula with emphasis on literacy. So what I was wondering with the board was if, when we're at schools, so last time we were at Fairfield, no, we were at NCTC. But NCTC, what do you have that gives some of this information for NCTC around the OKRs? And then when we go to city, same thing.
Absolutely.
When we go, so it's kind of a merging of the old way Maple Run did, where there was always a presentation from the school, but it would be in alignment with our 2 goals for this year.
Right.
And then when we get to next year, we do some of the same thing, but the principals might work together. So if we were working on how are we improving our supports for bias and harassment, we might be at city, but they might talk about all the school, all that work. And so we figure out a rotation plan with that. So I just wanted to, before I went, I was hoping to create that for tonight, but time got away from me. So I would kind of bring something to you, like looking at that, and that would be next year, but for this year, we would do just that idea. And I actually told the leadership team this afternoon in an email that I was gonna float something with you about that. So they've been asking, what's our role for principals with the board?
And we could just ask those questions. You know, it doesn't have to be something that you write up, right? So they can focus on the 2.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we could just ask, those questions.
Right, they might wanna do a little, I don't know if I haven't talked with them enough about it, they want to.
Let them know we'll be asking those questions.
Oh, yeah, they know, yeah, well, you should be asking right around those key results.
We should be asking, yeah.
We should give you should have the one pager, the OKR one pager that John loves. So, and, because he wrote it. For the
You
team.
love it?
Not by myself.
No, I said for the team. The team wrote it, but John put it together. So we can give you that as a good way of asking, hey, we see this key result. Tell us more about how that's working.
That would be great.
Yeah.
It's a good read.
If you do say so.
So that, if that would work, that's what we would do for the rest of the year, and then next year we'd have a schedule set up around the District 5 goals.
Okay,
Good with that?
I'm good with that.
Okay. That's what that was about.
All right.
Yep.
Moving on. So the next, probably lost something. The next section is the superintendent evaluation, and I move to motion item 7C, superintendent evaluation, to discuss the appointment under BSA 313A3, to discuss the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee. I vote to move that into executive session. Can someone second my motion?
I'll second the motion.
All right, and then I'm gonna call for a vote. Nilda? Jessica?
Yes.
Joanna? Yes. Jack?
Yes.
Susie, and I did something wrong. Carly?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Yes. Susan, yes. David?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
We're actually gonna move that to the end of the meeting. That's what I forgot to. So, we're gonna go into executive session at the end of this meeting. Okay, and then there is 7D, which is a personnel issue, and I make a motion to, I motion to move item 7D, per BSA 313A3 to discuss the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer into executive session. Can someone make that motion? Charlie? Okay, Nilda? I'm making,
Susan, you made the motion and Charlie seconded it.
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Okay.
So,
You looking for a second?
oh, we got that, but no, now we're gonna vote to move that item into executive session at the end of the meeting.
Gotcha. Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Yes. Joanna? Yes, I heard a yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Jack?
Yes.
Susie? Yep. Carly?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Susan, yes. David?
Yes.
Amanda? Yes. Okay, so we're also gonna be moving that into executive session at the end of the meeting. So new business, item 8A, FY budget targets, FY25 budget targets, and that's attachment 8A. And you,
Martha and Brady, and I'll try to keep my mouth shut.
okay. Go for it, ladies.
Well, it says from you to the board, so.
So basically, we're proposing that these are the targets that we're gonna work from based on information that we've gotten from outside sources, such as the staffing costs. Those have all been negotiated, so those percentages will be using those. I don't have in front of me, so I'm working off the top of my head here. But some of the other areas are the, like the health insurance. We just recently heard that the proposed rate increase that is being reviewed by the DFR, Department of Federal Regulations right now, is set to be 16.4% increase, so we're gonna work towards putting that in the budget. The dental, life, and disability insurances are gonna be minimal increases, if any. Workman's comp is gonna be one that we've got a budget about 10% increase towards that cost, and so on and so forth, going down through this list. So our thought and our assumptions are to use these to come up with a very first draft of a budget to see where we come in regards to our new weighting and tax calculations.
So if the board, will approve these rates, what we'll do for the next meeting is come to you and say, if you remember from our budget training last time, there's two caps. There's a cap for 5%, and if we don't use that this year, we won't be able to access it in next year's. And then there's a 10% cap that if we go over that, there's a committee that looks at it to say, was there a good reason to go over a 10% increase in per pupil spending? And if there was, if there is or there isn't, there's a recommendation that goes to the Secretary of Education who ultimately determines whether you can go over that 10% or not. So what we want to do is do some calculations for you next meeting, if these are the rates you approve, to tell you where do we think, and it really like back of the envelope. This is not budgeting with the principals.
Right.
This is like spreadsheet work. This is
Very rough.
We could be meeting those percentages just with this,
we could be.
basically.
That's what we want to find out.
We could be, yes.
But I wanted to, we did this last year, and I thought it was really effective for the board to say, yes, these are the we should probably call this the budget inflationary figures, not so much the targets.
Yeah.
But these are the inflationary figures that you can use in the budget to get a rough idea of where we're landing. Come back and tell us what that is. But as I said last year, we learned this from our colleagues down in Colchester. That's a really good way of stopping the back and forth so much. because then we can send the leadership team off to, okay, we think we're in the park. Let's not do a lot of back and forth. This year, that's a little different because we can't model, but I still think it's worth setting the board to set these inflationary amounts, so.
So you're looking for an action item on this?
Yeah, to set these inflationary, just to create the budget. It's not much more binding than that, it's really just trying to say, board, do you agree with these? This is what we're hearing, we're gonna use this to start creating the budget.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion to use the core budget assumptions as presented to create the first draft of a budget. Will someone second that for me?
I will.
Thank you. Susie? What kind of discussion? Any questions? Do you guys have any?
I mean, my question is around the health insurance. How does Blue Cross, how do they get away with this?
Well, all schools in the state of Vermont belong to the, it's the insurance pool, so we're in a pool.
Right.
And, I mean, it's owned by us, this pool, this insurance pool.
Okay.
And so, I mean, it is the rate that they need.
So as you and I were talking, because I kind of did the same thing,
Yeah.
and talked about a story that you and I heard last Friday, or Thursday, from some school board chair members about, like, what is this? I can get better insurance for my own personal with the same type of coverage, and we are in our own pool. So our pool has its own risk factors. Let me say this, the Vermont teacher workforce is aging. So the costs of insurance are based on what our pool does and what the experience has been. And that's where the 16.4% is coming from.
So we have to basically offer even more incentives for early retirement. We have to like look at those numbers.
Well,
like,
it's
really
not
carefully.
it's not just an age thing, it's what our pool is doing.
Right.
Our pool teachers across, families and staff that access this insurance across the state of Vermont.
Right, but if you take off people from, that are close to retirement, and you add in new, well, teachers,
I mean,
then are you changing your pool? I mean,
maybe not, because you might be bringing in younger families that have a lot more health risks. So, yeah, but it is based on our utilization for the whole state.
right, for the whole state.
Yeah.
So it's not just our pool.
It's not
No,
ours, it's
it's
the
the
state,
state.
statewide,
I mean-
statewide.
So I don't know how it compares across like private industry or anything, but over at the University of Vermont, this is about the insurance increase that employees are getting hit with, so it's not exclusive just to school districts.
I don't think it's exclusive to schools.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Not at all, and I mean, I know that the schools are getting better rates than private companies, for sure, in terms of premiums, right, that people have to pay. I'm just saying, how is it that they continue to be able to be allowed to raise it like this? It's just, wasn't the point of entering this pool to reduce costs?
So does this,
Nilda?
Yeah.
I just had a comment to make. I think just like the teachers are a group of people in a pool. I mean, I think you can take any corporation, anything, and realize that they're working on a risk model, and therefore are using previous experience to dictate future experience, and that's where we all are. It's just what percentage is it? What's the difference? That's all I had to say.
So,
I've got a general question about the budget that doesn't necessarily have to do with this motion. So after the motion, I'll make the question.
So, I would imagine too that they have to go before the state board.
Yes, it's the rate increase.
To request this increase.
The rate increase right now is being reviewed by the,
ACO.
no, it's the, geez, I had it in my head a minute ago. DRB, which is the,
The group of people who get to decide.
yes.
It's a
Department of
federal-
Federal Regulations, there you go. Who who
Okay.
oversees insurance companies and what they can and can't increase their rates. They're also the ones, no, I don't think they do hospitals, never mind.
A different company.
Yeah, it's a different company, but it's the same kind of idea. They go in and they check to see how much you have in reserves and how much you have set aside for claims, and they wanna make sure that this pool is solvent enough. So they will make sure that your rate increase is going to be enough and or that it's not gonna be too much, so that you're ending up with a huge surplus. So, yes.
Any other questions about the motions before the board? So the motion is, does the board accept the core budget assumptions for the purpose of creating a first stab at the financials for next year? All right, so I'm gonna take a vote. Nilda?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Joanna?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Susie?
Yes.
Carly? Yes. Charlie?
Yes.
Susan is a yes. David?
Yes.
Amanda? Yes. All right, so that passes. So there is another question that you have, Jack. What's that?
Yes, with the unknowns with this year's budget, the unknowns that the state, the figures that they're gonna give us about the weighted students and other issues. Regarding the 5% cap and the 10% cap, how are we really gonna know whether we run over that 10%? Like, what if we do everything we can to prepare a budget, and we think it's 9%, or we think it's 4% or something, and it winds up because of things that we now don't know, but we'll find out in April, or whatever, you know, way after town meeting, way after our budget is presented, and it goes over that 10%, what happens then?
So we should be able to model the 10% piece after the first part of December, because that's when we're gonna get our weighted student information.
Okay.
And that's the piece that we need to be able to determine whether or not we're in that 10% range or not.
Okay.
The 5% for the tax rate, we won't know. We won't know until the state, the legislature sets the yield, which is usually done in May or June. So we won't know about that 5% cap part until
We'll be able to
after that.
estimate it a little bit.
We'll be able to
Once we
estimate
get
it.
the tax commissioner's letter on December 1st and what they're recommending to the state legislature.
Okay.
And they usually play around.
Yeah.
They don't
So
usually.
it's a
go too
little
far.
better than I was thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
But as you and I saw, we sat in that one presentation, it can get somewhat circular
Right.
and change
Yes.
because it's all based on the overall ed spending in the whole state.
Yes.
So if someone makes a change or passes a bond vote,
Or if somebody meets that cap, then that means.
then others,
have to-
it will keep doing this.
Yes.
All over the place. And that's I'll talk about how I've been out communicating about that right now in my report.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to 8B, which is the June 19th board meeting.
Yep. So, yeah, I do. Our meeting in June, our second meeting in June, and I'm trying to get to my calendar, happens to be on Juneteenth, on June 19th. So, that's a federal holiday and is recognized by the state of Vermont as well. So the question that I have for this group is, do we want to, we've checked, I shouldn't say we, because you guys, everyone else who does the work around here, it's Aaron, so Aaron checked. And there aren't any other dates that coincide with holidays or anything else, but and Aaron brought this to my attention, so I thought we'd bring it here to say, do we want to meet that day, or do we want to move the meeting either somewhere else that week, or move it a whole week, one way or the other? And I didn't know what the pleasure of the board was.
What do people think?
I think we should definitely move it. My immediate instinct is to bump it back a week, but I think that lands on Amanda's birthday.
Aaron, don't you dare.
I'm not doing it again. I love my birthday because I didn't have to go to school.
When's your birthday?
The school board.
the, what is it? So,
The 28th.
the 28th.
Yeah,
28th,
28th
okay.
isn't on a Wednesday, right? So-
No, you're good.
No, 26th.
With that knowledge, my suggestion would be
Yeah,
to
it's
bump it to June 26th, because then we would probably not have our next meeting until mid-July. anyway.
Right.
So,
We should talk about the July meetings, we'll talk later on that.
People okay with moving that to June 26th?
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. I don't think we need to
No,
make
no,
an
no,
action.
no.
Alright, so we're gonna move that to June 26th. Know that that's okay with you? Okay, alright. So moving it to the 26th. Next section, new board check-in.
It should say new board member, I'm sorry, I didn't correct that. Jack, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to talk to you since Friday. Jack and I were at as you all know, we were at the superintendent's school board members conference, and Jack and I sat in on new board member orientation. That we thought we could bring the whole board back some information on that for our next discussion on the goals. But one of the things that you and I talked about was a couple of boards just said, after people were new on the board for a couple of months, they actually didn't do a lot. They did an orientation of how things work, but then said, so what do you need? And what do you still have questions about? Maybe Jack, you can fill in here with just.
Well, I think this one board that was presenting with their board, a board member and a superintendent, and they were talking about board orientation. And it was very much presented by the superintendent and the board chair perhaps, or whatever, but they finally, after going through several months, they somehow, almost by mistake, asked, what do you need? And all of a sudden, they learned that the new board member said, oh, well, I want to know this, or I want to know that. And if they had just done that the first day, they would have been better off. They learned that they're a prescriptive kind of thing, which maybe had some good information, but they left out, what do you need to know? And after a few months asking that, because you don't know what you don't know when you're first a board member. So by continually asking, they found was a really good way to go.
Yeah, and one of the things they found was that board members needed to know about how does the school system work, and they did it in a training. So for example, I'll use John as the example. Board member said, I don't know how curricula get developed around here, and what's our instruction, how does that work? So it was a board training, not a public meeting. So it also cut down the fences of saying, you can ask some questions, you're not gonna take any action on Maple Run, you're not gonna make any decisions, you're not even gonna discuss, it's just learning how does the system work. And that same board chair and superintendent said we had more veteran board members coming back, like, how can I go to those things? Because I'm hearing how the system works and I can ask questions so I know how it works, not to pry into changing it, it's more of just like, I just don't know how that operates.
Yeah, what does this mean?
What does this mean?
Yeah, what is that? What
Like,
is-
what does the business manager do and what's
Right.
some of the tasks and how does that operate?
And I'll be frank, I've been to 1,400 board meetings. And I learned something at every board meeting. And with things like that, with our community events that we've had and so forth, I'm still in kindergarten, I'm still learning stuff. So you never stop learning,
So I think our question, I'll go back to what our question is, and it may not be able to answer tonight, but is to have folks who are new to the board, relatively even, I would say to anyone on the board, what do you need? What do you need more information about to understand the system? And we'd love, I think, you and I said, Jack, we'd love to know.
Yeah.
And then try to find some training time to do that.
So people can email you and just say, this
Email
is.
me, talk to me at the next meeting, say, hey, I'd like to learn about this, and we could, you and I and Melda could figure out a schedule to do some of that and say, whoever wants to come and
Figure out who else needs to be there.
and who else needs to be there, you know?
Yeah.
I picked on two of my colleagues at the table tonight, but there's plenty of them around And it may be someone that's not on the leadership team. Like I'd like to know more about, I don't know, how the coaches work around here, the instructional coaches. Yeah. How's that work?
Sound good?
So
Okay.
That offer is very genuine. I think it could really help us.
All right, so we are gonna move on to other business. And I'm gonna make the motion to approve the warrants, acknowledging that the passage of this motion will act as authorization and signature of any individual board member participating remotely. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay. Amanda? Okay. I'm gonna take a vote on that. So, Nilda?
Yeah.
Jessica?
Yes.
Joanna? Yes. Jack?
Yes.
Susie?
Yes.
Carly? Yes. Charlie?
Yes.
Susan, yes. David?
Yes?
Amanda?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Next item, superintendent report.
Yep. First thing I wanted to tell you about, and I just learned about this morning from Leanne Wright, our director at Northwest Career and Technical Center. They're currently right now up at NCSS, it may be done, but are being honored for their way they partner with NCSS for workforce development and the partnerships which they do. And that they're not only the work that they do to support and work with NCSS in a collaborative way for students, but also the way they're impacting the future of students and learning about supporting the community, whether it be through social work or through preschool. Leah's a great example, was just here. She's very active in the social work program and doing internships in that. So it was really nice to hear that NCSS has recognized that out of our tech center. So it's a tremendous honor for them today, as they're being recognized for that. I wanted to let you know that, I'm gonna keep trying to pass these as I talk. Today was, I was up at Fairfield today, and I started last week at SATEC, and Aaron and I are working together and having listening sessions with all the faculty around the strategic plan and getting data for the December 2nd. We're inviting people to be part of that, but also they have a way through a Google form that Aaron designed and put together where we're getting feedback back in, similar to what the students are doing. But at the same time, I'm also giving them a presentation about how, with the budgeting work, it's going to be later that we know something than in prior years. So the big thing that I say to them is the big takeaway is, usually around this time of year, we're already modeling and having an idea where next year's budget's going, but we can't do that with what the changes happen. And that there's impact from grants and impact from student needs and from the new Act 127 that we talked about last meeting. So we're doing that. Like I said, I was at SATEC last Wednesday. I was at Fairfield today. We'll be at SACS on the 14th, and then we're finishing up with BFA on the 28th of November. So we're really trying to get that information out. And one of the things I'm trying to say to staff is, I just really want to be transparent. I wish we knew more. We don't know more right now. Just as we said to you as a board, but just trying to be really clear that it's going to get really fast, and there'll be a lot of decisions, and that we may have to make some tough decisions in January. We'll try to keep you as informed as we can, but at the same time, it's going to go really quick. Usually, we're able in previous years, if we could see cuts coming down, we could usually start talking to people that would be impacted in late December. Usually held it through the holidays and did it in January, but like this year it's going to be pretty quick. We went to the VSBA conference, and I want to give you all some slides. Jack, again, please help me out here. You and I were seeing a great presentation Friday morning with a superintendent from California, and he put up a slide that I've shown you. I made figures nowhere near as eloquent and simple as these that say the same thing. And so I really like them. And I think this has been put up on a web resource, but I wanted to print this out for you. Hopefully there was enough already, but for some reason I had two, so hopefully everyone gets one. I really like this first one, and Jack, you and I saw this and we said, oh, this is really pretty clear. This whole section was talking about roles and responsibilities, and I really like this Venn diagram, and it made me feel pretty good about what does the board do, and what does the administration staff do, and where is the overlap? I don't know if you want to talk any more about that, Jack.
Well, I mean, it's something all boards struggle with. You know, what's the board's responsibility? What's the administrative team, the superintendent, and what's their responsibility? And I think this diagram shows that for the most part, they're separate roles and responsibilities, but there is a little overlap, and that's in that green area.
And I felt really good because I was like, that's what we're working on right now. Those
Yep.
strategic goals and those indicators, those success indicators.
I'll be honest, it was the second day of this conference, and looking at the title, I thought, oh man, this is gonna be boring. This guy was a comedian, and he made sort of a dry topic that I've heard 1,000 times. But he made it, it was very humorous because he brought out things that are just funny. Some of the mistakes that boards make and some of the mistakes that administrators make can be comical, but they tell a story.
Yeah.
You know, they show what, you know, how people have gone array.
Well, I like what he said, like if the superintendent's over telling what the mission, vision, policies, and priorities are, that's not good. Should the superintendent be asked what their opinion is, or the administrators? Yes. Same is true for the action plans, implementation, evaluation, progress reports. Should we ask the board for what they're thinking? But it's the responsibility of those two lanes.
Right.
It's not that you're not talking about it, it's just like, that's where the responsibility.
And he just gave some, right to the point, but humorous examples of, you know, going into the wrong field, you know?
Yeah.
And then he showed a few little clips that were funny too. A comedian show of.
Yeah, the SNL school
Yeah,
board.
yeah, Saturday Night Live school board meeting, and it was pretty darn funny. But with humor, you sometimes see, oh, I remember when somebody did that, or, you know, and I can look back at those 1,400. I can tell some stories of, you know, some night over a bonfire and some,
Susan, you had a question.
Kool-Aid, talk about something.
No, I don't think
Yeah. I really like the what is determined by the board and the how is determined by the administration, leadership team, and staff.
Yeah.
And then on the second and third page is just more about responsibilities of the board. I don't think you've seen these before. This isn't new for any of you, and work we did with Tracy, we talked about this, so I just thought it was a much more simple. And this third one is, it took me a long time to learn this as a superintendent, is that line between the governance and district, it's got waves, and there's gonna be tension or discussion, as he said, I think he used the word tension sometimes in there, but that's a good thing. That's that constant conversation.
Messy.
It gets messy, you figure it out. So you keep talking about that. And then the last one was just a really simple way of saying, this is what the board does. And I just really like that definition. I mean, I've seen, I can't count the number of things I've seen for definition about what the board does, but this was short, succinct, and to the point.
Right. But we still have a ways to go to where we're truly setting the direction. And that's because of the amount of, you know, newness that we have. And so just gaining that understanding so we can truly set the direction.
Yeah, I think you're doing that, though, in the goal work that you're doing.
I think we're going in the right direction. Yeah. And I would imagine this is continually evolving, you know. Alrighty.
Just want to remind you, the design committee, we had great participation on the 25th. The next one is next Tuesday at 5 o'clock on the 7th. And we sent out a piece, and I want to thank Erin in her role. She said as soon as the main shooting happened, hey, should we be sending out something recognized, just reminding everyone, we take, we always get some calls from parents about, when something like that happens, tragedy happens, what's at the school. So it was just a nice way to remind everyone of our thoughts. We do have several staff members that have connections to Lewiston, so. That's it.
Alrighty, board announcements?
I won't. Back off from the edge of your seat. The town of St. Albans wanted me to let you know that they have community service opportunities for some events that they put on within the year. So if anyone is looking for community service time.
Can you, Erin, can you make a note for me to talk to Murr about that? Jeff Murray does the community service for the seniors.
Yes.
Thought you were gonna talk about the musical.
Oh, no, I didn't.
But the musical BFA is coming up.
Yeah.
So
And what is
get
it?
your tickets.
It's Mamma Mia.
Yeah,
I think it's the 16th through.
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
They're always amazing things.
Oh, yeah.
They were out handing candy out on Main Street and for the businesses for trick-or-treaters on Saturday.
Yeah.
And the players for
Any other board announcements? All right, then we do need to go into executive session to discuss the superintendent evaluation. So in that session, we need all the board members